Hello, welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with charcoal. So you'll need your number 2 or HB pencil, a kneaded eraser, and use your oldest, rattiest kneaded eraser. This charcoal has a tendency to mess up a kneaded eraser. And a piece of charcoal, anything you'd like. You'll need a cotton swab for blending, and let's get started. Thanks for being here today, by the way. I always enjoy drawing with you. It's one of the great joys of my life is drawing. I can be using mostly charcoal today to get our darks. But we're also going to start out with our number 2 pencil. Just because this is easily erasable, charcoal doesn't erase as easily. Charcoal does smear very, very well, and so we've got our cotton swab that we're going to be smearing with. And our kneaded eraser in case there's anything that we need to clean up. All right, so the first thing we do is establish where our head goes. And since we're missing a lot of the hair, I'm still going to give myself a little bit of room up at the top. So I'm just going to kind of come down and go, okay, this is where the hairline starts. And I'm just going to do some little zigzaggy kind of, just kind of set myself some parameters. And then, therefore, the chin's got to be down in here somewhere. So if I just put a little line down there, just say that's how big I want to make it. You want to use as much of this page as you can. It is much easier to draw large. Also, if you notice our picture, she's not straight up and down, she's slightly angled. And so what you may want to do is maybe make a little line there to say this is the angle. That kind of helps you to figure out, okay, the nose and the mouth and all have to line up this way, not this way, but this way. And so then I'm just gonna do this kind of oval just to say this is where the head goes. So if you look at our section here, remember the head goes up above it. So clear up above our page is where the top of the head is, but it's covered up with hair here. Somewhere towards the middle is where the eyes are. And if you think about the hair being down here and the top of the head being up here, if I were to actually put that right smack dab in the middle, I'd say the eyes are probably about right in there somewhere. And so I'm just going to mark it out very lightly with my pencil. And remember, it's not straight across. It's at a slight angle. Remember, her head is at a slight angle. So if that's where the eyes go, and I divide the space between the eyes and the chin in half, that's about where the middle of there's a little divot that's just under your nose. It's called a philtrum. And that's about where that philtrum goes. That's not the nose. If you put your nose down there, it's going to be too long. So somewhere up above that mark, you want to do just a little shadow to just say that's where the bottom of the nose goes. And on the other side of that mark, you can put a little divot. That's where the philtrum is, that little divot. And somewhere in there is where the mouth goes. I'm not going to mark the mouth in yet. I'm going to try to establish where the eyes go. This is an easy way of proportioning. If you understand the proportions of the human face, every time you draw a face, it's going to be a lot easier. Your eyes are the same distance as your nose. So if your nose is this big, your eye is going to be the same length. Because if you go straight up from the nostrils, that's where your tear duct is. So if you kind of establish your nose and say that's about where it is, and you just make little marks there. You could adjust this up a little bit here and there, but for right now, you just kind of make a little mark, say that's where the nostrils go. And if you go straight up from the nostril, that's about where your tear duct is. Straight up from the nostril, your tear duct. And that space is as long as your eye is. So you can kind of measure that. You can do that with your pencil and just kind of come over and say, okay, that's one eye. That's the other eye. So that the spaces here are the same. You have one eye, then you have the length of another eye in between your eyes, and then another eye over here. And if you wanted to do like this little arch right above there, and a little arch right above there, just a little arch. Her eyes aren't exactly arched like that. We can adjust that as we go. But that kind of delineates where the eye goes. And the bottom lid is not curved as much as the top is. Most people, when they'll draw eyes, they'll make this almond shape. Your eyes are not that way. The bottom lid is less curved. Less curved. And your iris, the middle part, of the colored part of your eye, rarely shows completely. Usually the top part is cut off a little bit. And when you smile, the bottom part is too, because it pushes your cheeks up into your eye. And so all I do is make a little bracket there, and a little bracket there, a little bracket. So the bottom's slightly cut off, the top is slightly cut off. And then for your pupil, it's just a little moon shape or a little C shape. Because oftentimes there is a highlight over your pupil. And your pupil almost touches your top eyelid. Sometimes it does. So I just do a little C shape. These are basics. I mean, everybody, I kind of start out everybody this way. And then you adjust it as you go. Now, the corner of the mouth is from about the center of the eye down is where the corner of the mouth goes. So if you go over to your mouth and you say, well, that's about where the mouth goes, somewhere in there. You got a little top lip there. But if you come down from the center of the eye and make a little mark, center of the eye, make a little mark, that tells you how wide your mouth is. Now she's smiling, and so a little bit, that's going to extend a little bit beyond the center of the eye. And everybody's slightly different, but at least it gives you a starting point. Her top lip is slightly curved. The bottom lip is curved quite a bit more. And then there's teeth in there somewhere, and the teeth, if you just come in about on the inside of the iris, straight down, that's about where a tooth starts. Same thing over here, about the inside of the iris, come straight down. That's about where the teeth start. And then you can do the edge of the teeth. Just ever so lightly. Remember, all this stuff can be easily erased. The bottom lip, you don't want to draw a line around your lips. They're a little darker color than most of your face. So I'm just going to put this little mark down there, just this little shadow right there. There's the bottom lip. Now I analyze this. Does she need more chin, less chin? You know, for me, I think she needs just slightly more, so I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit and do a little shadow right there on the chin. And her chin is fairly straight, and it's about a little bit wider than the nose. So if I come straight down from the nose, make a little mark there, that's about where the chin goes. Just a little bit wider than that. And the curve of the jaw is straight out from the mouth. So if I go straight out from the mouth, there's the curve of the jaw. And I could just add a little curve there. Just a little curve there, and a little curve on the other side. And then that goes almost straight into the chin. There's a slight curve to it. Slight curve. Of course, you can add that later too. Slight curve to it. The cheekbones, if you go straight out from the tip of the nose, there's a little cheekbone there. Sometimes, like if you're doing cartoons, or you can come straight out from the tip of the nose and just make a little mark there and say that's where the cheekbone goes. Everybody's pretty close to that. Now, you can see the shadow of her cheek there. Doesn't necessarily have an edge like that, but I'm just marking it just to help me see where it is. And your jaw is going to go slightly out to the middle of the cheek, which is just below the eye, and then it goes in. So you get this kind of curve, and the apex of it is just below the eye, about where the cheek is, especially if you're smiling, because that pushes it up a little bit. And of course, you've got eyebrows, which are just slightly above that. And a female eyebrow is going to kind of come up to about where the eye starts, right in there, about the iris there. So it's going to kind of come up there, and then it's going to come down. So you get this kind of arch right there. And again, if you like to draw superheroes or, Marvel kind of comics or DC kind of comics, this is how they do it. It's very easy once you understand the proportions of the face. And of course the hair, we'll do the hair later. If you can see ears, which we can't really see ears, but if you go straight out from the end of the nose straight out, that's about where your earlobe is. Straight out from the tip of the nose, there's an earlobe there. And the top of the ear is straight out from the eyebrow. So you go to the eyebrow and straight out, you do this little hook or little arch right there. That's where your ears go. Hers are covered up with hair. But you can kind of see the darkness that is created by the ear right there. So you just know that that's kind of where the ear is. Same thing over here. You see this kind of darkness created there where the ear goes. Whenever you do hair, don't make a line across here. You know that's where it starts. But just do these little shapes kind of coming into the hair. And I like to take my pencil and just go in the direction that the hair flows. With that feathered line. It's that line that you kind of drop in and give it a little flick. And you get this little feathered line. And you can kind of come out and you can delineate the hair. You can make sure that it's in the spot that it needs to go. But again, it's not that big of a deal. We can do this later. And hair is another one of those things that if it's not perfect, that's fine, because as soon as this picture was taken, that hair changed. A gust of wind came up or whatever happened, and the hair was different. But the eyes, the nose, and the mouth are always in the right place. And that's what's important. Make sure they get in the right place. Now, all those preliminary lines, like this little line here, it's going to go away. If it bothers you, you can get rid of it. You can take your kneaded eraser and you can go into it and just pull it out if it bothers you. But if it doesn't, don't worry about it, because we're going to be drawn over the top of this anyway. Once you got your proportions and you're happy with where everything is, and at this point you can adjust it. You can say, well, I need to put my nose up a little bit higher or a little lower or whatever needs to be done. This is the time to adjust it, because this graphite is easily erasable. The charcoal is not as easy erasable. So when you're ready, shift over to your charcoal. And now what you want to do is pick out the darkest areas. Sometimes you just kind of squint your eye at it because you don't want to do details. You don't want to make a line around everything. You don't need those lines. Your edges are going to take care of themselves. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to shift over to this charcoal here, and I'm just going to pick out the darkest areas without being detailed. So for example, on her eyelashes, yes, you can see each little individual eyelash, but don't do that yet. That's like one of the last things you do. So you just want to pick out the darkest areas and just put in those dark areas. Without being detailed. It will become detailed later on. Right now, it's not a big deal. I always start with eyes, by the way. I don't know, the eyes are important to me. They're the windows of the soul. So I just do the darkest areas I see. And I know that it almost looks like I'm trying to do details, but I'm not. Just letting it go. And if there's a little bit of light in there and you think, oh, I can see a little bit of that eyelid or whatever, don't put it in there. You can always blend it or add it later. Not trying to do eyelashes, not trying to do details, just the darkest areas. Even the eyebrows, you know they're little hairs, but just do the shape of the values. And the idea that it's hair will come through. Just the darkest areas. When you're doing nostrils, that's another thing. A lot of people will draw a line and then shade in the nostril. Don't do that because the bottom part of the nostril is soft. You could do a line for the top part of the nostril, but the bottom part of the nostril is soft. And so I'm just going to do a little shape for the nostril. Don't draw a line around it, just a little shape. It's kind of like a little Nike swoosh, a little upside down Nike swoosh. You guys know what the Nike swoosh looks like, right? Here's the cast shadow of her nose underneath. The corners of the mouth are very dark, and they're just little triangles. So if you start out with those little triangles, those little corners of the mouth, and just darken those in, then the rest of the mouth is going to come through. Don't worry about teeth, remember. Just do the shapes of them. A little bit of darkness. There's the corner of the mouth. The rest of that we can do with our cotton swab. All the teeth we're going to do with the cotton swab. We don't even want lines in those teeth. Even though you can see the separations in the teeth, if you do a line, it looks like a gap. You don't want to do a gap. You don't want her teeth to look gappy. So even her lips, we're going to do those with the cotton swab. Except the big shadow underneath that bottom lip, you may want to throw that one in. Just a little bit. And hopefully you're seeing this kind of coming together. The little lines, the little smile lines around her face, we kind of want to avoid those a little bit. If you wanted to put those in very, very, very lightly, you could, but try to avoid the line idea. They're little shapes. And so I'm just going to put in a little bit of that shadow. Just a little bit. I'm going to avoid the darkest line because it's not really a line. It's not an edge. It's a shadow. And if you use line, then it's going to look like she's old. And we don't really want that. Her chin on the bottom, there's a shadow there. Under her chin, over here is another shadow, as well as on the other side. And where the ears go, there's definitely a shadow there. So just throw in the shape of those shadows. Don't worry if you go, oh, it doesn't look like an ear. That's okay, because I don't see the ear. It's just the shape of a shadow. Just the darkest shadows you see. Just try to emulate the shape of those shadows. Where her thorax is, her neck there, there's usually a little shadow along there. So you can throw that in. Remember to keep the edges soft, broken, if you will. When you're doing the hair, pick out the shadows of the hair. So like I see little shadows up here. I'm going to do these little shadows. Then I'm going to leave it. And just your viewer's eye will make that connection that those are all connected. When you're doing hair, try to get your pencil going in the direction that the hair flows. Do the shapes of the darkness you see. And then leave it. The idea here is, too, we want to get enough charcoal on the surface that we can use this. We can manipulate it. So just do the shadows that you see. When you're doing the hair, just pick out those shadows. You can have these little shapes just kind of floating out in there, not really attached to anything. And everybody gets the idea, oh, hey, that's hair. These little lines are not really attached to anything. Once you have enough graphite on there, or charcoal in this matter, you can take your cotton swab and you can start blending things. And this is where the magic happens. If I take my cotton swab, and this is a clean cotton swab, I'm just going to take this cotton swab. I'm going to start with the center of the eye. I'm going to just kind of move out and just do a little bit of blending here and there. I can pick and choose where I blend it. There's a little shadow under her eye. Just going to take that. She's got some little wrinkles too, and they're hard to see, but everybody has them. Around the eye, little smile lines up in here or underneath the eye. And rather than draw those with a pencil, if I use my cotton swab to just put in the little shadows underneath, then they look like wrinkles rather than edges. The shadow that goes down the nose. Beginning artists will often draw that with a line, but you got to avoid that line. So what you do is you get enough charcoal on there, or enough graphite, whatever you're drawing with, and I get enough on my cotton swab. Now I can take that and push that down and do that down the side of the nose rather than a line. And this you can do little circles, or you can do just back and forth, same kinds of things. That little shadow that's under the nose, there is a core shadow that's right there. Right next to the nostril is, in fact, let me zoom into her so you can see this. Remember that sphere we drew? There's our highlight, there's our light side, there's our shadow edge and our shadow core, reflected light, and this is our cast shadow. So the nose is very much like a sphere. And as you're drawing that, let me zoom into this. You can do the same thing with your cotton swab. You can say, well, I can see where that core shadow is. And it's a very light touch. You don't have to press hard at all. But this might be the easiest nose you've ever drawn. Just using your cotton swab. And to some of you, this might be the first nose you've drawn. I'm kind of excited to get to the teeth, so I'm going to show you how to do the teeth. While we're here, we're going to do this with our cotton swab. So we're going to pull out any of the dark. So any of the dark that's there, you can kind of blend that. You need some of that on your cotton swab. And then look at her gums. You can go in and go, okay, here's a gum. Just make a little mark. Here's another tooth over here. Make a little mark. There's another one. There's another one. And the side of her teeth are a little more shadowed. So you can just take your cotton swab and just make a little line down from there. Either down, or you could go up if you want to. And notice how I'm defining the teeth without using my pencil. If you use a line, it is a little harsh. So I'm just using my cotton swab to define her teeth. And your teeth, even though they're white, they're not really white. There's got to be a little bit of value to those teeth. While you're at it, might as well do the lip. The lip is just use your cotton swab to get that lip. Do the bottom lip while I'm at it. Usually the bottom lip has a little shine on it, which hers does. And so you can use your cotton swab to kind of define that edge. But try to leave out where the shine is. Don't put too much in there. And if you like go, oops, I put value where it shouldn't be, you can use your kneaded eraser and pull that out. You can always come back into it and add more. So if you think, well, that's not quite dark enough, you can always add more. Sometimes I'll twist my cotton swab to get to a clean edge because I don't want to put so much graphite or so much charcoal out there. So you can pick and choose how much you put into it. Like I say, you can always add more later on. Then, when you're got enough information there that you can kind of look through it and go, okay, I see what's going on there with those teeth and everything, you clean it up with your kneaded eraser. So you can come in and you can say, okay, I see that little highlight there. I'm going to pull that little highlight out. There's a little edge there with my kneaded eraser. I'm going to pull that out. You can draw as much with your kneaded eraser as you can with your pencil by just taking things out. It's called reductive drawing. Some people like to do that. I get a little frustrated sometimes with it because it doesn't reduce as much as I want it to. And then you can go back into it. You can darken it up. You can take your pencil in there and darken little areas that you want to as well. But that's your basic teeth. And look how they look nice and tight, and they don't look, like they're falling apart or anything. And that's basically the technique. It's just kind of drawing and smearing a little bit. The lightest parts of the hair you just leave out. You can take your pencil and do a few little strokes with your pencil like this to get some darker streaks to them. But otherwise, I'm just going to now take my cotton swab and just do some blending. There's her eyebrow. There's a shadow that's above that. I'm going to use that to get the shadow. Now, if you are drawing somebody that has more wrinkles or more pronounced wrinkles, it's the same technique, the same thing you do here. You just take your kneaded eraser and you just go in and touch it And you'll get those little wrinkly effects without having to draw a line. Sometimes not drawing is better than drawing. Because if you see a line or you see an edge and you think, oh, I don't want that edge in there, or I don't want to see it as well, you just don't. You can always come back in and add it later on. So when you're almost done with the drawing, if you're looking at it going, oh, I need that edge, you can put it back in. Sometimes your cotton swab can get kind of large and unruly. You can just get a new cotton swab or use the other end. I like them when they're that way, and I'll do the flesh tones, the skin, because it's large and there's usually larger areas that you can do with it. And I can come back in, I can tighten up things. I also like my cotton swab for little light hairs, like on the side here. There's a little bit of hair that kind of comes out here. I can use my cotton swab to just kind of throw in some of these really light hair that kind of comes out and about, and leave that edge nice and soft. If I used a line, then it would be too hard of an edge. So especially on hair, try to avoid the line if you can. You can always come back in later and do more with it. And just like our sphere that we drew, we started out kind of light, kind of soft. Then we got darker and darker as we went. Same thing here. You start out soft, kind of ghost-like. And then as you refine it, as you add to it, it gets more detailed, more contrast. Hopefully you're to that point where it's starting to look pretty good. Even if it doesn't look like her, though. Portraiture is very, very difficult. So don't be concerned if it's not looking exactly like the person. As long as it looks like a person, you're getting the concept down. The more you practice, the more it'll look like that person. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back into it with my charcoal and really tighten up some areas. And I can also use my kneaded eraser to pull out any light areas that I think I need. This will also tighten up some of my edges. It'll also help increase my contrast. Contrast is always helpful. Always makes your drawings look better. The difference between dark and light. And when you're doing like eyebrows, the little hairs, once you've got the shape of them, you can come back in with your pencil and just with the very tip, put in some little tiny lines. Those will help to give it that hair-like quality. So if you can keep them going in the direction that the normal flow of the hair. The last thing you want to do is little eyelashes. And just look at the direction that the eyelashes flow, and try to stay in those directions. Look how that contrast just makes those eyes pop. Makes them come through. The last thing I'm going to do with that eye is those eyelashes. Just a couple little flicks. Notice too how the eyelashes curve up towards the inside. They go more straight towards the middle and then more curved towards the outside. Again, if you understand what's going on with the eye, it makes it a lot easier. And that eye becomes very realistic looking. It's that feathered line where you drop it in, you just kind of give it a little fleck. As I'm refining it, I'm just I'm looking at some of those little dark edges and saying, okay, I need those little dark edges just here and there. I don't have to do them all over. I can pick and choose what I do. Those little teeth that you can see underneath there, I wouldn't worry too much about those. But if you leave a few little gaps of light in there, then it looks like teeth underneath. When you're ready to do the hair, just kind of go from the darkest areas into the lighter areas with kind of a little flip of your cotton swab, or with your pencil. You can do the same thing. Don't connect them because there's those light areas in between. Then you can take your kneaded eraser and come in, just pull out just a couple little thin areas, little thin lines, and that'll make it look like hair. Remember, we're just giving the illusion of hair. We're not drawing every little individual hairs, just the illusion. Last thing you do is just a few little lines just to show where those edges are. You don't need a lot, just as many as you think you need. And you can refine and refine and refine this until it's very photographic. Also, when you do hair, make sure that your lines aren't all the same length. Get some short ones, some long ones, some that flip out, some that flip in, because hair does that. You don't want it all going in the same direction. That's when it starts looking fake. Did I cover all your concerns and questions today? Is there anything that I can help you with? One of the last things you want to do is figure out where you want to put your signature. Your signature is part of your copyright. It's part of the design. And you need to kind of keep in mind that it needs to be someplace that is not obtrusive, that doesn't conflict with your design. But it's also got to be someplace that people will notice it, because that's important. And again, that's kind of a personal decision. So for me, I put it down somewhere towards the bottom, but not right on the edge. Kind of up into it, somewhere about right in there. Thanks for drawing with me today. We've got about a minute left is all. I hope you have a lovely day. And I hope somewhere in your life, art makes it a little bit better.